Okay, glad to be with you here today on Resurrection Sunday. Today we've called the update, and this was approved by the pastor, okay, so the mother of all updates. And I cleared it in advance. There's nothing pagan meant about it or anything like that, so don't put any posts about that in the YouTube comments. It's intended to mean the mother of all updates. We talk each week. We're going to try to get you out of here as close to on time today as possible because I know it's a holiday and you want to spend time with your families and you want to beat the Baptists to the buffets and that type of thing. So we talk about the convergence of events, and it seems like every week when I do these now, I'm just constantly I look at newspaper, I look at magazines, I look at news sources, I look at intelligence analyses of things going on in the world geopolitically, and it's like, oh yeah, I should put that in, and that goes in, that one too, yeah, it all goes in, and as a result, I end up with way more than I can ever get to because it does seem like everything is happening all at once. It was a stressful week for a lot of people. I would just urge everybody to, just calm down. We're all going through it together, whatever happens. And, look, if you're really secure in your faith, what's the worst thing that happens to you? You're with the Lord. And we have to focus on that, especially on a day where the resurrection is so prominent in our minds, because that is our hope too. Because if Jesus didn't rise from the dead, we don't have any hope, but he did rise before. So let's get into this, and it's just, I think I have it organized, but I've been up since about 2 or 3, and sometimes I'm tired and I go to, oh yeah, I need to move that, and I forget. So let's just look at some things. This is a survey done by the BBC in England. And just look at some of the things they found. 17% of all people believe the Bible version word for word. 31% of Christians believe word for word the Bible version, rising to 57% among active Christians. Now, they set the bar pretty low in the BBC survey for an active Christian, because active Christian to them means those who go to a religious service at least once a month. Now, I don't really consider that to be an active Christian. Here's some other things. Exactly half of all people surveyed did not believe in the resurrection at all. 46% of people say they believe in some form of life after death, and 46% do not. So pretty even split there. 20% of non-religious people say they believe in some form of life after death. 9% of non-religious people believe in the resurrection. 1% of whom say they believe it literally. So in other words, 1% believe it. Here's a chart, belief in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. You can see believe the Bible version. Active Christians around a little under 60%. That's troubling that only 60% of active Christians. Now, what they call a Christian is open to interpretation. You can see do not believe it. The general public is about the same percentage of active Christians who believe it. Here's another survey. Regularity of a religious attendant among Christians. Weekly, the green. 1 to 3 times a month is the blue. Less than once a month is the orange. And never is red, which means, listen, the Bible says don't forsake the assembly of yourselves together in Hebrews. And actually, there's an eschatological component attached to that assembling of yourselves together, especially as what? You see the day approaching. So as we get closer and closer to the end, that's when Christians should be assembling together more and more. And it seems to be less and less because a lot of Christians, they just ignore the times and the signs of the times that we live in. Barna's American Culture and Faith Institute had another story. A survey details how the core beliefs and behaviors of millennials compare to those of other adults. And what they found was that among millennials, those are people who were born about 1980 and after, up through about 2010, 2001, I'm sorry, those people, so they would be 16 to 37 years old now, only 4% of those have what Barna identifies as a Christian worldview. But now it's true in other surveys he's done, all Christians, it's only like people who claim to be born again, really only about 7% of those have a biblical worldview. So when I read those, I'm a little bit skeptical that when the rapture happens, that there's going to be millions and millions and millions and millions of people leave. It may not be that way. If it happens, say, during a church service, people may be sitting there and they may say, hey, did Joe go to the bathroom? Anybody seen Joe lately? Because he left some things behind here. And anyway, maybe he left his false teeth behind. So, okay, so other religious news. I think this is significant. The Bible Answer Man with Hank Hannagraff. Now, I've mentioned things here in the past about Hank Hannagraff. He spoke last year at the Christ at the Checkpoint conference. He's a preterist. He had a debate a number of years ago about the dating of the book of the Revelation, and with Mark Hitchcock. And in my opinion, I've seen the debate, Mark Hitchcock destroyed him on the date of the book of the Revelation. He thinks it's much earlier. To be a preterist, you really need to get the book of Revelation written before 70 AD. And most good scholarship says it was written in the late 90s, sometime in the 90s. But Hank, about a month ago today, actually on March 17th, Hank was asked a question on his radio show about theosis, which is a doctrine held by the Orthodox Church. He said, well, there's nothing really wrong with it. And then it says, well, what do you say about orthodoxy in general? And here's what Hank said.
I mean, if you look at orthodoxy in general, I think that you find that it is well within the pale of orthodoxy, with kind of a play on words in a sense, but it is certainly compatible with the essentials of the historic Christian faith. Now, there are areas that Catholics and Orthodox disagree on, and certainly that Protestants and Orthodox disagree on, but in terms of being compatible with the essentials of the Christian faith, absolutely. Orthodoxy is fantastic in that it uses earthly perceptible realities to point to spiritual verities. So it's constantly pointing you to the worship of God through prayer, praise, the proclamation of the word, through the sacraments, the liturgy pointing to the Eucharist. I mean, it is the Eucharist in essence. And so, yeah, it's the early church. That was the church up until the split in 1054 between East and West, and essentially what the church was teaching up until the time of the Reformation and even afterwards.
Now listen, he is historically wrong on the development of orthodoxy. The earliest Christian church, you can read about it in the book of Acts and in Paul's epistles. And a lot of the practices that orthodoxy developed came much later. They weren't part of the original apostolic faith and practice. That is an historical fact, and it is a fact that Hank Hannagraff is dead wrong when he talks about it this way. And he talks about like there's just minor differences. There are major differences between Protestants, evangelicals, and Orthodox. In fact, and he acts like the Orthodox all agree with each other. They don't agree with each other. They have vast differences from thing to thing. And so for him to get on there, this was strange that he would get on there in March and say, look, this is no big deal. It's just part of the faith. Now, starting in 1998, on the Christian Research Institute website, equip.org, was an article about Eastern Orthodox Church. And this is what existed on the Christian Research website for almost 20 years, Christian Research Institute. Listen to some of the things that are written. The opening paragraph says this. Now, the reason why I say that is a couple things have happened in the past 8 days with regard to this. And one of those is the fact that last Sunday in a Greek Orthodox church in Charlotte, North Carolina, where Hannagraff has his ministry based, and there are a lot of questions about he got his ministry. You can go read, you can look those up on the internet, and I'm not going to justify anything that this man did in the way he got his ministry started. He took over Walter Martin's great Bible Answer Man ministry. And this is Hank and his wife and 2 sons kneeling and being baptized into the Greek Orthodox Church last Sunday in Charlotte, North Carolina. And he's made some statements about it. This is what this one blogger says, yet behind the appeal, and he talks about how this has been going on now for some time in evangelical, loosely using the term evangelical thing that's called the emerging church. They've been moving towards orthodoxy because they like the ritual, they like the mysticism that comes with it, this theosis, and the experience that they have. Now, look, I've only been in a couple Greek Orthodox churches in my life, one in Nazareth, and it's not organized anything like this. They have like I don't know if they call it the Holy of Holies, a holy place where only the priest is allowed to go in, and you can watch them go in there and do their thing. But, it's separate from the regular people in the church. It has to be done with the priest. And Hank's comment, remember, he said, well, Orthodox and Catholics have some differences. There are vast differences. There are questions whether they even believe in the true gospel. Now, that sounds harsh, but this is trend about people leaving evangelicalism and going to orthodoxy. And there's a reason behind it, because evangelicalism, in large part, has abandoned the faith itself because they've gotten into seeker-sensitive things, and the teaching is weak, it's not very exacting. And so they like the ritual and experience because it feels like it's religious. So this blogger notes, and I think correctly, about the appeal to move to orthodoxy. Yet behind the appeal lies some hard realities. The Orthodox world is not monolithic, and one cannot become Orthodox in general. The Orthodox tradition is not entirely apostolic. That's exactly right. That's exactly what I said. And consequently, the claim to represent the true Church of Christ is triumphalistic. So back to this thing that was on the website. And this website, this article written back in the late 90s was really in response to a book written by this man, Peter Gilchrist, I believe he's passed away, Coming Home, Why Protestant Clergy Are Becoming Orthodox. So 20 years ago, this was starting to become an issue. And this article was really written to refute the things that were said by Peter Gilchrist in his book. He was a Protestant, or an Anglican, I can't remember which, and he moved to Greek Orthodoxy, or Orthodox Church. He wrote other books, Becoming Orthodox. He wrote another one, The Nation of Israel and Prophecy. And what do you think he believes about the nation of Israel and prophecy? Nothing. It's not important at all. And this is where Hank Hannagraff has been himself for many years. I think probably in the class I used to teach at the other church, I did something. He had a guy on his radio program, I'm guessing it's about 10 years, 8, 9, 10 years ago now, named Colin Chapman, who had written a book called Whose Holy Land? The guy is anti-Jewish, he's pro-Palestinian, the Jews have no right to the land, and that type of thing. Things which we disagree with strongly around here. And it was apparent then that Hank was going to turn into a preterist and have no use for Israel, and everything that he's done since has been consistent with that, what I consider to be downgrade in what he has formerly taught. So in this article, it has a synopsis. The Eastern Orthodox Church, well, I'll get to this in a minute. Now, the reason why I bring this article up is, if you today go to the Christian Research Institute Guess what you'll find where this article is supposed to be? You'll find oops. And that's the URL down there at the bottom. But the nice thing about the internet is things you put up on the internet are hard to get rid of. And there's a website called archive.org. So if you ever go to a website and you have the URL, go to archive.org, paste it, copy that URL and paste it into archive.org, and magically you will find the web page as it existed up until about a week ago. So Hank converts, and all of a sudden the Eastern Orthodox page on CRI's website I don't know if it was raptured or if it just disappeared or whatever, but it's gone. But here's what it said. Recent years have witnessed a surge of Western Christians joining the Orthodox Church. With its emphasis on mystical union with God, its rich history, and its beautiful icons, sacred images, and liturgies, Orthodoxy appeals to those who long for a deeper sense of wonder in their worship and faith. Yet behind the appeal lies some hard realities. Now, this is the until a week ago. This you could find on Hank Hannagraff's website. The Orthodox world is not monolithic, and one cannot become Orthodox in general. The Orthodox tradition is not entirely apostolic, and consequently, the claim to represent the true Church of Christ is triumphalistic, same thing that the other blogger said. Orthodoxy follows a different theological paradigm. For example, within Orthodoxy, the doctrine of salvation has a different meaning than within Catholicism or Protestantism. Protestant evangelicals who have joined the Orthodox Church often display an inadequate understanding of the faith they have embraced. Some well-known apologists of this new trend are urging the Orthodox to mount a crusade to win America to Christ. Reading such claims, one cannot avoid asking if such statements are based on solid historical and theological arguments, or if this is yet another religious diversion. Does this sound like it's a positive article towards Orthodoxy? No. Despite triumphalistic claims of Orthodox apologists that they embody the true apostolic faith, in reality there is a cluster of conflicting traditions, theologies, and ecclesiastical structures. Protestant evangelicals in America who were eager to embrace the Orthodox faith soon discovered that Orthodox churches in America are divided. In fact, their liturgies are spoken in their national languages, and they are hesitant to welcome outsiders. For example, Frankie Schaeffer, a passionate promoter of Orthodoxy, concluded that one side of the Orthodox Church in America is a sort of social ethnic club infected with nominalism, materialism, ethnic pride, exclusivism, and indifference to the sacraments. And so what you learn from that is Frankie Schaeffer doesn't like anybody except himself, because he says the same thing about evangelicals. And I agree with some of his criticism of evangelicals. Orthodox scholars, the article continued, the one that's miraculously disappeared, suggests that certain teachings and practices are not apostolic. A man named Ware asserts, not everything received from the past is of equal value, nor is everything received from the past necessarily true. As one of the bishops remarked at the Council of Carthage in 257 AD, the Lord said, I am the truth. He did not say, I am the custom, because they're based a lot in tradition. Although it is clear from Peter Gilchrist's writings that he and his colleagues do not have a clear understanding of the Orthodox faith and its complexity, their claims to have discovered the true apostolic faith can mislead others who search for religious experiences influenced by limited knowledge and the current American hunger for mystical realities. Hank didn't even read his own website, or he fell away. A close look at orthodoxy can help both the sincere searchers in the Orthodox churches themselves to avoid adding members to a romanticized, idealized church of the Western imagination rather than the real Orthodox churches. And Frankie Schaeffer, on his website, he has this statement that he says, Frank is a survivor of both polio and an evangelical fundamentalist childhood. He's the son of Frances Schaeffer, the great apologist and thinker. So he equates polio with being raised as an evangelical fundamentalist. And he wrote a book called Why I Am an Atheist Who Believes in God. That's, I think, one of his most recent books. And now How I Came to Find Love, to give love, create beauty, and find peace. And there's another book out, too, called The Benedict Option, which sort of urges people to go to this Orthodox tradition. That Rod Dreher, it just came out this week. Now, one of the things you learn when you look at Orthodoxy is they are not into apologetics in the least. Defending the faith is irrelevant. That is not tradition. That is not the original faith, because the elders, you remember in Titus chapter 1, verse 9, are admonished. Elders are ones holding fast the faithful word, which, does it say anything about tradition in here? Faithful word, which is in accordance with the teaching, so that he will be able both to exhort in sound doctrine and to refute those who contradict. And for years, Hank Hannagraff has been on his program supposedly refuting those who contradict sound doctrine. And now he has joined a tradition. And so he'll say something like, I think it's on his website, I stand by everything I've written over the last 20 years. Well, big deal. What are you doing with it? You've joined a tradition that doesn't like what you've done for the last 20 years. So I can only hope that there's going to be a lot of radio stations and radio networks and stuff. They're going to take him off the air, make people work to find him. So, in an article in the American Interest, just a couple quotes from this, the deconstruction of the American West. The greatest threat to the liberal international order comes not from Russia, China, or jihadist terror, but from the self-induced deconstruction of Western culture. The author says this, it is also not surprising that a weak and corrupt Russia has been able to shake the international orders by simply applying limited conventional military power. Russia's not, in terms of military power, they have some things that are great, better than ours, but then a lot of things they have are not as good as what the United States has. But they're very clever at the way they project power. Or that a growing China casts an ever longer shadow over the West. The greatest threat to the security and survival of the democratic West as the leader and the norm setter of the international system comes not from the outside, but from within. And with each passing year, the deconstruction of Western culture, and with it the nation state, breeds more internal chaos and makes our international bonds across the West ever more tenuous. And there are numerous examples of that. I won't go into a lot of detail about this, but from the Tablet, which is a left-leaning paper or magazine, it says this, Catholic University in Belgium sacks lecturer who called abortion the murder of an innocent person. Listen what the article says. The contents by Stephanie Mercier created an uproar at the university, the francophone twin of the Flemish language Catholic University of Leuven. After a feminist group complained, he was presenting his personal opinions in the class. Now, did they ever come up and say, hey, you're denigrating the Christian faith. That's your personal opinion. You shouldn't be doing that. No, there are professors all over grading people down for writing things in defense of the Christian faith or defense of creation science or something like that. Why? Because it doesn't match up to the left-wing, leftist orthodoxy that's become the university in most places. In an article he wrote and distributed to students, Mercier presented both philosophical and anecdotal arguments in favor of his firmly pro-life position and denounced a widely used term in French for abortion, IVG, which means voluntary interruption of pregnancy. They don't call it abortion. IVG is a euphemism that masks a lie, he said. The truth is that abortion is the murder of an innocent person. In its statement, UCL stressed that abortion was legal in Belgium since 1990, and it respected women's autonomy to opt for it. So, what did they do about it? Nothing. They fired him. Here's a lady from Sweden. She has gone to school to become a midwife, and she's been fighting this for a number of years. This was an editorial in the Wall Street Journal the other day. And she's been blacklisted because she is anti-abortion. So her job is to bring babies into the world. But because she is anti-abortion, meaning killing babies before they get into the world, she's in big trouble. So listen to this. But Miss Grimark underestimated the authorities' determination to root out anti-abortion sentiment. In spring 2013, with one term left in her studies, she asked supervisors at the hospital where she planned to work to accommodate her conscience rights. She received a furious call from one manager. "How could you even think of becoming a midwife with these opinions?" Ms. Grimark recalls the manager screaming, "What would you do if a patient who'd had an abortion came to you bleeding?" To which what would she do? I would help her. She's bleeding to death. So I would help her. But you understand how the leftist mind thinks, that you're an uncaring, unfeeling, unsophisticated moron because you don't support abortion rights. And they just don't see how anybody that cannot accept that position. You have to be an idiot not to believe that. One other hospital denied her employment over reviews, while still another made an offer only to backtrack. One even offered counseling to help her come to terms with abortion. Speaking at a panel on Islam, and this is in the article, speaking at a panel on Islamist extremism in 2015, Mona Salan, a prominent politician and former government anti-terror coordinator, argued that those who refuse to perform abortions are, in my opinion, extreme religious practitioners, not unlike jihadists. And I only say this as, there's prophecies about persecution in the end times. And so you need to prepare your minds and hearts for that, because I think it's coming. In January, a TV segment framed Ms. Grimark as part of a global wave of oppression against women. On another TV panel the same month, feminist writer Sissy Wallen mused, "Those who are against abortion now, can't we abort them retroactively?" Another planist replied, "Yes, a really great idea," and the others chuckled. So that's another example. Back to the deconstruction of the West, national communities cannot be built around the idea of collective shame over their past, and yet this is what is increasingly displacing a once confident, perhaps overconfident at times, Western civilization. The increasing political uncertainty in Europe has been triggered less by the phenomenon of migration than it has by the inability of European governments to set baselines of what they will and will not accept. Now, I disagree with him some on that point. The migration is only accelerating that disconnect that they've had to any common shared ideals or mores. Whether one gives the deconstruction of the Western nation state the name of postmodernism or globalism, the ideological assault on this very foundation of the Western-led international system has been unrelenting. It is no surprise that a poorly resourced radical Islamic insurgency has been able to make such vast inroads against the West, in the process remaking our societies and redefining our way of life. Some of this deconstruction was evident this week. Now listen, Sean Spicer, you know what he said, that not even Hitler used chemical weapons on his own people. And immediately everybody on the left jumped on him. Oh, he's denying the Holocaust, he's an anti-Semite. That's just a bunch of nonsense, okay? What he said was he didn't bomb his people with chemical weapons. So it's probably a sign that you ought not to use Hitler analogies unless they're exactly appropriate. But he wasn't denying the Holocaust. And even Alan Dershowitz, a man on the left, came out and said that the people that offended him were the Jews on the left who tried to pander to people by running down Sean Spicer. And I agree with Alan Dershowitz. I'm grateful that he's come out and told the truth. That's at Gatestone Institute, Spicer's mistake and the Democratic overreaction. A week ago, yesterday, in the Wall Street Journal was a profile of Ayaan Hirsi Ali, Islam's most eloquent apostate. She stood bravely against Islam. I disagree with her that Islam can be reformed. I think that's a dream. Okay, she's an idealist. She's also an atheist. She needs the Lord, so pray for her salvation. But I do appreciate that she's been very brave, herself a victim of genital mutilation. She's been very strong. She cannot go anywhere without 2 bodyguards because of the death threats made against her. So she was to go to Australia to speak. She's now at Stanford, I think she's at the Hoover Institution. I think she was at Harvard for a short time, but she's now at Stanford. She was going to go to Australia to speak about, what she writes about in her book Infidel, about her upbringing and her escape from Islam, and she had to cancel because of security threats. Do you know of anybody on the left who's had to cancel visits to a country because of security threats? Or to a college campus? A week or so ago at Claremont University in Claremont, California, just down the street from where my in-laws live. Heather McDonald, who's written about, black crime and black on black crime and police violence against blacks. She went to speak, and they put her into, they had threats. They had about 250, 300 people show up shouting. And they asked her, she said, I knew something was wrong. I heard an interview with her on Dennis Prager. So I knew something was probably not going the right way when the day or the day before the event, I got an email from Claremont saying, we're looking for a room to move you that doesn't have large plate glass windows. And they put her in a safe room for 2 hours. She did speak and live stream to another room. She did speak at UCLA a couple of days to a week before, and that went okay. But when the Q&A started, all the leftists started shouting her down. And one of her questions was, which really upset them, was, in black on black crime last year in the United States, 900 more black men were murdered by other black men than the 1 year prior to that. Does that bother you? Does that bother you about the kid who's paralyzed in a drive-by shooting in Chicago? Does that bother you about the kid who goes outside, a 9-year-old kid who's drugged into an alley by a rival gang to the gang that his father belongs to, and the kid is shot and killed? Now, they didn't intend to kill him when they drug him back there. They were just going to cut off his fingers and mail them to his mother. But does anybody ever talk about that? I mean, seriously. So, this terror wave still continues. Of course, we had the truck attack in Stockholm. The suspect has now admitted it. And this report came out this week. The guy's from Central Asia. And the important thing is not where he's from, but what he is. And what religion drives his ideology. And the Swedish officials had sought to expel the suspect last year, but just never got around to it. Norway put out a threat assessment, the threat of jihad. This just came out this week. And it talked about how they're dealing with this in Norway. Now, as soon as within an hour, is my understanding, of the attack happening in Stockholm, Norway made a radical change. It armed all of its policemen, gave them weapons to carry. Previously, they had not. So now they're thinking, maybe if we have a cop around with a gun, that maybe we'll stop the truck attack before it gets too far. That apparently had not occurred to them before. And they live in a very idealistic society, and I understand that. Very pretty and all, pretty scenery and all that. So this is what it says in the report. These calls to action are one reason why you've seen an increase over the last few years in the number of lone terrorist attacks in the West. The likeliest scenario for a terrorist attack in a Western country is an ISIL, Al-Qaeda-inspired attack carried out with a simple weapon against a target with little or no protection. It talks about immigration. Immigration to Europe will influence the terrorist threat in various ways in the coming year. One of the problems we expect to face is the radicalization of asylum seekers. How about the fact that they come there already radicalized and they sneak in? Migrants and illegal immigrants in Norway. Attempts may be made to radicalize members of these groups by other migrants at reception centers or by visitors. Furthermore, radicalization in prisons is a common phenomenon that will become more common in Norway in 2017. There are a number of individuals currently in prison as a result of national investigation of travelers to Syria, and in 2017, more of them will be prosecuted for violation of the terror provisions in Norwegian law. This means that there will be an increasing number of prisoners in Norway who have played a role in extreme Islamist groups here and who will also have operational experience gained abroad. It is likely that extreme Islamists will retain their convictions in prison and attempt to radicalize others. Attempts have already been made to radicalize other prisoners, including individuals sentenced for gross violence. Then it talks about lone wolf attacks are rightly described as an actual terrorist strategy rather than the media likes to describe as a random mental illness. In addition, this threat assessment now fits all of Europe. Now, I heard Patrick Poole, who lives here locally, works with the Center for Security Policy. He says these should not be called lone wolf's attack. Because every time, what's the thing come out? The person was known to terrorist authorities. So there's not lone wolf, but known wolf attacks. In Britain, there's an article in The Economist this week talking about immigration. And The Economist, it's a globalist magazine. That's its agenda. It would like to see a new world order. It would like to see, I think, the collapse of the nation state. Because borders aren't that important to them and what a country stands for, because it's really all about economics and getting people to do the work to support the elites. That's the impression I get from reading through this magazine weekly. And so explaining Britain's immigration paradox. Migration is good for the economy, so why are the places with the biggest influxes doing so badly, looking at England? Why are the people that have the most immigration the least happy with it? I mean, it helps the economy. These people, immigration is a boon for Britain. The 9 million odd foreign-born people living there bring with them skills and attitudes that make the country more productive, younger and better educated than natives. Immigrants pay more in tax than they use in the way of public services. For some institutions, they're indispensable. Perhaps 30% of doctors in Britain are non-British. Now, what do they mean by non-British? Usually Pakistani Muslim. Sometimes Indian, but India is one of I think the second largest Muslim population on the planet. In Dunkirk, in France, hundreds of refugees unaccounted for after a fire destroyed the Dunkirk camp. It burned down and they left. Last Palm Sunday, what was it, over 100 people? I mean, I can't even show you the pictures of what happened when this bomb went off in these two churches. In Jerusalem, just a day or two ago, a British tourist was stabbed to death on the light rail line. And that's troubling. I mean, that's the knife the person used. The person was arrested. He was a 57-year-old lone wolf. That's how it's described on the front page of today's Jerusalem Post. Mark Stein wrote a great article. Friend Michelle Bachman sent me this, The Incoming Roar. Listen to what he says, because he kind of goes through the history of these recent terror attacks. This is kind of a long clip. I'm going to read a lot of it. In other words, the United States bombed Syria after chemical weapons attack. In UK, Canada, Canadian, and other newspapers reported on the treatment of a Berlin schoolboy received after revealing to his Muslim classmate that he's Jewish. Meanwhile, Giulio Miati wrote for the Gatestone Institute on the closure of 500 churches in London and the opening of 423 mosques. In Egypt, the Palm Sunday bombings were the most significant event of the week. They demonstrate that hardcore Islam is serious about expunging the remnants of Christianity from the region in which it was born. This is not a small thing. It was a clever attack. The first suicide bomber hit St. George's Church in Tanta. The second struck northwest at St. Mark's Cathedral in Alexandria, seat of the Coptic papacy. Pope Tawadros, whatever, II, had just left the cathedral after hearing about the Tanta attack. Nevertheless, ISIS and its affiliates came within minutes of killing the Coptic patriarch at worship in his church on Palm Sunday. As I said, not a small thing, but it doesn't seem to make a lot of news. Other Christian leaders, from Pope Francis and the Archbishop of Canterbury on down, seem to have more to say about potential hypothetical upticks in Islamophobia than about the sustained attempt to eradicate the oldest adherents of their own faith. On America's watch, public expression of Christianity was obliterated in Iraq, and the last Christian church in Afghanistan razed to the ground. Almost exactly 2 years ago, when 148 students were slaughtered at a school in Kenya, President Obama could not bring himself to identify them as Christian, even though their killers had gone to great pains to separate their captives according to their faith, releasing the Muslims and killing the Christians. As I remarked somewhat mordantly, apparently black lives don't matter when they're Christian to Barack Obama. The Islamic supremacist assault on Christianity is not confined to the Holy Land and the more benighted parts of the developing world. Monday's subway bloodbath in St. Petersburg was also celebrated by ISIS as making a metro to hell for worshipers of the cross. Among the dead was Chris Bevington, an Englishman who worked in Sweden for the music streaming service Spotify. And he goes on to say, we think that, this technology and its development and everything, this is great, and this is what they're really attacking. But the secular, see this second sentence, but the secular consumerist utopia attracts the ire of the Islamic imperials too, not just religion. The killer in Stockholm was like his comrade in St. Petersburg and ethnic Uzbek, but he was principally a Muslim, and one who divided the world into two groups, believers and non-believers. The people who create such billion-dollar boutique diversions assure us that they are the future, and the likes of the Stockholm jihadists are momentary aberrations, freakish eruptions, and the otherwise smooth progress to a world in which the seductive siren of the unending song can be piped directly into your cerebral cortex 24 hours a day. The killers of Stockholm, Petersburg, and Alexandria are betting otherwise. And a two-pat symbolism, the Westminster Bridge attack claimed among its victims the window cleaner of Churchill's country home, Chartwell. More tellingly frightened, the toll of the dead in Stockholm numbered this lady, the young mother of an 18-month-old baby. She'd worked as a psychologist at several Belgian migrant centers helping refugees whose asylum bids had been turned down. Then he talks about this German boy who was beaten in Germany. He was told Muslims hate all Jews, and the parents took him to the school because they thought, because it had Muslims in it and everything, they had bought into it. The multicultural school would be a good place to raise our son. Guess what they've done? They went and they wanted Holocaust survivors to come in and talk to students, and the people at the school said, no, not interested. So they pulled the kid out. Mark continues, when there are no Jews left, who will they hate? In London, the church is closed. The church is closed and the mosque open, and it happens so gradually you don't notice that the melancholy, long withdrawing roar, and now is what in fact the triumphant incoming roar of what comes after. CNBC paraphrased London Mayor Sadiq Khan's reaction to the Westminster attacks this way. Terrorists can't stand London's thriving multiculturalism. On the contrary, they understand very well that it's not thriving, that multiculturalism is merely an interim phrase, and that what comes after will be more unicultural. In Western cities, the field of corpses is already quite high, with Belgian psychologists who devoted their lives to helping refugees, and French priests who gave Catholic property to their Muslim neighbors to worship on, and daughters of EU bigwigs who ask in their murdered child's memory donations be given to migrant assistance charities. Until they abandon their illusions, they are on the same metro to hell as Alexandria and the other post-diversity cities of the Muslim world. Great points. Let's talk about Syria. Syria continues to fall apart. There's a lot of controversy. Was that a made-up attack? Why did we bomb? Is this part of some kind of conspiracy and that type of thing? I'll let you decide. I just want to note that what's going on in Syria is incredibly complex from a geopolitical standpoint. If you see the headlines, move unlikely to endanger Assad rule. Airstrike raises tensions with Tehran. What happens if Assad was taken out? And this is what I would ask McCain and President Trump and all the people that seem to support this. What comes after? What came after the vacuum in Iraq? What's come after the vacuum in Afghanistan? It's not pretty. It's probably worse than before. And if, say, for example, we get rid of ISIS, I'm fairly confident that the Shia militias that will come in to replace them will engage in the same bloody tactics that the ISIS Sunnis engaged in when they took over the place. And they'll go in and they'll kill everybody who supported ISIS. And as they go through the Mosul now takeover, it's going fairly well at the moment, but there are a lot of embedded terrorists, and there are a lot of people that help them, and anybody going in there is going at great risk. We saw in Syria, just as people were being evacuated from one region, I believe they were Sunnis from Damascus, what happened? Somebody went in with a big bomb and blew up the buses. I don't know, I heard hundreds dead, but I'm not sure. I think this just happened yesterday. I mean, what replaces an Assad, who I don't think much of? And I'm a little disturbed by people who are running around turning him into some kind of saint. He's not. His father used chemical weapons on his own people, killed almost 30,000 in one village. And I think Assad has done some of this. He's not a saint, okay? He's very clever the way he played off all the various groups in Syria, the Christians against other people and that type of thing. And for whatever reason in Dara, 6 years ago, things started to unwind. But this is very, very complicated what happens. So this is a graphic from the Wall Street Journal yesterday, sort of showing the different players that are involved, who's on this side, like Turkey, U.S. and Saudi Arabia oppose Assad, Russia, Iran, they support Assad, and then Israel kind of stands on the sidelines and say, we just won't let anybody do anything that's going to hurt us. And so this world has become incredibly complex. Even after the attacks on the airfield, what happened? The next day, Syria went in and stepped up its airstrikes in the same place where the alleged gas attacks occurred. So there's a lot of tension between the U.S. and Russia. I'm not going to play this slide, but this video, but Russia and the United States are probably at the lowest point of their relationship in decades. Our government, they did this. They took part of our fleet, aircraft carrier, B-52, sent them to the area, to the theater near North Korea. They did ground training, tank excursions with South Korean troops in South Korea. They had this rather, in the upper left-hand corner, you can see the video of this. I fast-forwarded through the whole thing. It was almost 2 hours long. This is their parade to honor the grandfather of the current leader of Korea. And this guy here on the right, he's the main clapper. He's the head clapper. And all these videos, all this, for like 2 hours, this guy's there like this. And this is the father of the current leader, the goose-stepping troops. They have a flyover with planes. And, he's very happy, the leader. He's applauding, he's saluting. And I have to tell you, as I fast-forwarded, there's the head clapper again. He's still going. There he goes down. He saw that the leader was looking his way, and he thought, I'm going to end up in a prison camp if I don't get my arms up a little bit higher. And I have to tell you that there's tremendous pageantry there. In the lower left-hand corner are some new missiles that had never been seen before. But with this thing went for like 2 hours. Very highly choreographed, and probably one of the most boring things I've ever seen. It's like a version of the opening ceremony of the Olympics, where just people keep walking. It's like watching the St. Patrick's Day parade in New York. Okay, I have nothing against Irish people. I love Irish people, but it's just a bunch of Irish people walking down Fifth Avenue for like 5 hours. And it's okay, you can do that, but I watched it for like 15 minutes and I said, I'm out of here. So this new missile now this morning, there were reports that he tried to fire the missile. It blew up on the missile pad. The U.S. intelligence people that were talked to or sourced for some news articles said, hey, we knew it was going to happen and we knew what was going to happen. Now, whether that means they somehow sabotaged the launch or whatever, I don't know. So, there is some risk. I don't think they're quite there yet for their missile technology, but when they cross the line and they can fire, do you think this nut's not going to try? And do you want to be the president who lets this guy fly one into Hawaii or Los Angeles? So, very difficult. And the missile defense that we would have is, while it can shoot down some missiles, a big enough attack would be very difficult to deal with. So, we have a new man, or an old friend of ours here at Prophecy Update, is emerging in a new appearance. Mahmoud, I'm mad about jihad. That's how we refer to him. Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, I'm mad about jihad, is trying to make a comeback. We don't know whether that'll be successful, but he's still around. He hasn't gone away. I really don't have time for this article. A lot of people have concerns about UN troops and coming into the United States and enforcing martial law and that sort of thing. This is an article from the Associated Press looking at what happened in Haiti with Sri Lankan troops and elsewhere with these troops. And what they found is that the best thing that these troops were good at was raping and sexually abusing young children and teenage women especially, and teenage boys in Haiti and elsewhere. That's what you really need to fear from UN troops. You know, lock up your kids if you see UN troops around. There's one article here. Here's another boy identified by the number V09, was 15 when his encounters began. Over the course of 3 years, he said he had sex with more than 100 Sri Lankan peacekeepers, averaging about 4 a day. 15 years old. 3 years. Started when he was he was 15 when it began. There's already things in there. It's just horrible. And the UN said, well, you know, we think we're advancing in the right direction, especially with the Secretary General's new approach. And I'll say what that new approach is. Maybe it's only to sexual abuse people who are over the age of consent. I don't know. Big problem. A boss says he's going to step up. He has unprecedented steps on the West Bank Gaza split. And nobody knows exactly what that means. So let's finish up with this and one thing I actually think we'll get done close to on time today. With thousands purged, chaotic Turkey struggles to fill the void. Today as we speak, I don't know if the polls have closed yet. I think they closed this evening.
They closed about 12:15, and the number came in higher initially, and it's been dropping about half a percentage point every 5 minutes as I've refreshed it.
Okay, so the Turkey referendum results, which are taking place today, at least as of this report, at the Daily Sabah.com, sabah.com, show a yes vote of 53.20% and a no vote of 46.8%. That's about with 85% in, but I was told that this number keeps dropping about every hour by a half percentage point, the margin of victory. So it's going to be close. Sometimes in Turkey and other places where a strong man is already in authority, one of the things that becomes the question is not, you know, whether they're going to win, it's by how much. So sometimes they make it close just to look more legitimate. So ever since this coup last year, Erdogan is engaged in these rallies. This was in a city in Turkey the other day, followed by a rally in Istanbul, this one here in Istanbul, where Erdogan went and defended these constitutional changes. But listen to this article from The Economist, the legacy of an attempted coup in Turkey. How did we get here? Erdogan used to be the mayor of Istanbul. He was put in prison for a while for calling for an Islamic revolution in Turkey, which was at that time trying to be a secular society. Got out of prison. He was very clever and subtle the way he did things. I think he came into office about 2004, became the president about 4 years ago because his term as prime minister was over. And he was very clever the way he did this. And he continually, what he did was he started purging generals that were not thinking the Islamic way that he wants from the military. And then last July, there was this coup that took place in Turkey. Now, did he fake it? Was it made up? I personally don't think it was made up because since that coup, there have been 200,000 people removed from military, educational, and governmental posts. There are, I believe, 50,000 have been imprisoned. And essentially what he's done is he's decapitated the leadership. And so unless he has people to replace them, and that's why I think he moved into an alliance with Russia to kind of support that. But listen to what The Economist says this week. The shock of the coup, the bloodiest in Turkey's history, and the courage of thousands of people like Mr. Ünal who risked their lives to oppose it has been overshadowed in the world beyond Turkey's borders by the mass purges, detentions, and reports of torture that followed it. In Turkey, it has been different. To legitimize President Erdogan's draconian policies and to boost his attempts to bolster his powers through a new constitution, the memory and trauma of the coup have been nourished, politicized, and consecrated. In other words, what he's doing, he's a brilliant guy. You know, he knows that we live in a world where people like a story, they like a narrative, they like the postmodern view. And it exists in Turkey. So Erdogan is exploiting it. So he's using propaganda about the coup to build himself up. In Mr. Erdogan's hands, the article says, the coup has turned into the cornerstone of what the president and his supporters refer to as the new Turkey, a more religious, more anti-Western, and less predictable incarnation of the republic founded by Ataturk over 9 decades ago. Universities, parks, stadiums, swimming pools, and other landmarks across the country, including the Bosphorus Bridge, where soldiers fired on unarmed protesters, have been renamed after the coup and its victims. On the streets of most cities, billboards proclaiming that Turks will never succumb to pushtis or terrorists mingle with banners calling for a yes vote in the constitutional referendum. At the start of the school year, children across the country were made to watch a video that moved seamlessly between footage of the coup and images of Ottoman troops squaring off against Allied forces during the First World War. The Education Ministry has added a class on the events of the July 15, 2016 coup to the curriculum. Mr. Erdogan compares the coup of Turkey's War of to Turkey's War of Independence. His age reached for even more creative historical parallels. July 15th was a revolution that will shape Turkey just as much as the 1789 influenced France and just as the Bolshevik Revolution influenced Russia, says Mehmet Ukum, a presidential advisor. The coup exposed and brought down the anti-democratic structure within the bureaucracy, this man claims. The new constitution will help fill the vacuum, he insists, and we will have to rebuild the state from the ground up. And so in another article, Turkey is sliding into a dictatorship. They look at what's going to happen under the new. On the left is the country system where they had a prime minister there in the center. You see Erdogan as the president. Legislature has some influence, and now what it's going to do is they'll elect the parliament. The parliament will have very little powers, and they're essentially voting themselves to be under the control of a new caliph. And that's what's going on in Turkey right now. So I think it's probably going to win. And remember, we talked last week, I didn't have a good graphic at the time. This is Turkey, but recently, last fall, Erdogan, as a part of this process, started talking about expanding the borders. And you see Aleppo, Raqqa, and Mosul, and this is essentially what maps look like. This is what it looked like. This is what Erdogan says he wants it to be. He wants Turkey to expand. He really wants to revive the Ottoman Empire. Other things going on. I have one thing, if you can bear with me for 5 minutes. It is now set in Africa and Yemen. 20 people are at risk of almost immediate starvation from famine because of a drought. The world is in a very chaotic situation. It really is. So, we're told we don't have the spirit of fear, so we shouldn't fear these things. But they are happening all over the place. There's millions displaced in Syria. There's over 600,000 dead. And as I said, even if Assad loses power, we have no solution for Syria. In Israel, and this week, there were meetings with the Palestinians between China that wants to correct the historical injustice done to the Palestinian people. And they're urging for they want a two-state solution. And this is very interesting. I will try to expand on this more, but you really need to go and do your own reading and research. There's a pretty good website that I think explains the way some of these things are going. It's called Oriental Review. It's either .org or .com. And they have a number of articles there. Remember, and Mike is across the hall speaking on Ezekiel 38, so be sure you go home and listen to that because he'll talk about the alignment of the nations there. And we see that, but what's interesting is there are 4 countries that have become, starting in the last few years, what they call multipolar. We used to live in a sort of a bipolar world. It is schizophrenic, but usually like it was east and west. So the United States looks at East and West, and we try to protect the West. There are three countries, TRIC, that are trying to become multipolar, in that they're playing off both sides. T is Turkey, R is Russia, I is India, and C is China. And so what China has done is its part is it's rebuilt the Silk Road to the Middle East and even into Greece through overland, and it's a land and sea Silk Road coming up through the Gulf of Aden and into the Red Sea and then up through the Suez Canal. They have railroads they're building into Greece. And part of what they want to do is to facilitate trade. This is important because this was an article on the front page of the Jerusalem Post. It wasn't hidden. But Israel and Europe have now signed plans for the world's longest underwater natural gas pipeline, running from Ashkelon up to, well, here's another picture of it, up through Greece. Now, what's the import of this? Russia doesn't like this. Because why? Because about the only thing that Russia makes money on is selling gas to Europe. And so they want to control the flow of gas. And that's partly what the Syrian war is about, is who gets to run their pipeline through Syria. So Turkey's kind of playing Russia off against the East and West, and Russia's playing Turkey off, and India's over there. They want to please everybody. They want to ignore the Christian persecution that's going on in India. So this pipeline will be very expensive. It's probably not going to start being built for another, I hear, 7 or 8 years. It'll take a while, but as part of what the conflict is in Ukraine has the pipelines to Europe cross Ukraine, and Ukraine wanted to, I guess, get a cut or control that, and Putin didn't like it. That's what's led to the dispute in Ukraine. I think this is part of what's leading to the dispute and could lead to the hooks in the jaw that bring Putin in to the Middle East in Ezekiel 38 to shut off this gas flow. Now, if he can control the gas flow, he's all for it, because he'll take his cut. He'll make some money. Israel makes money, and everybody should be happy. But he wants to control it because he views it as a geopolitical and strategic threat. So if you go to Oriental Review, they have, I think, some pretty good articles on the development of this. There's particularly articles in 2015. Let's see. Oriental Review, the Russia-Chinese Strategic Partnership strikes Israel. This is from January 2015. And so this Silk Road, this is from a Chinese website. You see the train, you see the blue line going down there through the Indian Ocean up through the Red Sea, and you see the red train going across Asia to Europe. And you see the blue mosque there, and you see things in Europe, I'm not sure which building that is in Europe. The blue mosque in Turkey on the left, I'm not sure what the next building is. And that's what China wants to do. And Russia's kind of doing the same thing, and they're sort of joining together. So let's finish with this. And I've gone over my 5 minutes, but I want you to hear this. I'm not going to apologize. This happened on June 7th, around June 1st through 7th of 1967. Just about 50 years ago. This is Israeli troops taking over the Temple Mount and the Western Wall for the first time. Jews have been barred from the Western Wall since the war and the Partition War in 1948. It was a tremendously significant, important moment in Jewish history. This year, the 50th anniversary is going to be celebrated on May 24th. Pam and I, our intention is to be in Jerusalem that day. Lord's worked some things out so we can go. And I want to see the celebration that takes place. But what's interesting about the celebration day, there's a website, Chabad. It's a Jewish, I think a Lubavitcher Orthodox group. And in Jewish synagogues and Jewish life, they have assigned daily readings. And these are assigned years in advance. So if I went to the website, Shabbat.org, and I typed in June 7th, 1967, what are they reading that day? Now, I will tell you that I check this out periodically, and these things happen all the time. I'm going to read to you the psalm reading that day is Psalms 135 to 139. This is the end of the Six-Day War, the reunification of Jerusalem. By the way, I went, since we're going to be in Jerusalem hopefully that day. What's the reading for May 24th when they celebrate it? Guess what? Psalms 135 to 139 is the daily reading that day. Well, what's in Psalms 135 to 139? Listen to this and we'll close with this. Psalm 136. Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his mercy endureth forever. Oh, give thanks unto the God of gods, for his mercy endureth forever. Oh, give thanks to the Lord of lords, for his mercy endureth forever. To him alone doth great wonders, for his mercy endureth forever. You getting the point? To him that by wisdom made the heavens, for his mercy endureth forever. To him that stretched out the earth above the waters, for his mercy endureth forever. To him who made the great lights, for his mercy endureth forever. The sun to rule by day, for his mercy endureth forever. The moon and stars to rule by night, for his mercy endureth forever. To him that smote Egypt and their firstborn, for his mercy endureth forever. That was just celebrated this week with Passover. And brought out Israel from among them, for his mercy endureth forever. With a strong hand and with a stretched out arm, for his mercy endureth forever. To him which divided the Red Sea into parts, for his mercy endureth forever. And made Israel to pass through the midst of it, for his mercy endureth forever. But overthrew Pharaoh and his host in the Red Sea, for his mercy endureth forever. To him which led his people through the wilderness, for his mercy endureth forever. To him which smote great kings, for his mercy endureth forever. And slew famous kings, for his mercy endureth forever. Sihon, king of the Amorites, for his mercy endureth forever. And Og, the king of Bashan, for his mercy endureth forever. And gave their land for a heritage, for his mercy endureth forever. Even a heritage unto Israel his servant, for his mercy endureth forever. Who remembered us in our low estate, for his mercy endureth forever. And hath redeemed us from our enemies, for his mercy endureth forever. Who giveth food to all flesh, for his mercy endureth forever. Oh, give thanks unto the God of heaven, for his mercy endureth forever. That's Psalm 136, and I'll close with Psalm 137. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down, yea, we wept until we remembered Zion. We hanged our harps upon the willows in the midst thereof. For there they that carried us away captive required of us a song, and they that wasted us required us mirth, saying, Sing us one of the songs of Zion. How shall we sing of the Lord's song in a strange land? If I forget thee, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget her cunning. Thank you. I forgot to delete that part of the slide. Listen to this. This is the verse chosen years in advance to read on June 7th, 1967, and which will be reread on the 50th anniversary on May 24th, the reunification of Jerusalem. If I do not remember thee, let my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth. If I prefer not Jerusalem above my chief joy, remember, O Lord, the children of Edom in the day of Jerusalem, who said, raise it, even to the foundation thereof, O daughter of Babylon, who art to be destroyed. Happy shall he be that rewardeth thee as thou hast served us. Happy shall he be that taketh and dasheth thy little ones against the stones. It is not a coincidence. And just as God has reached out to the Jewish people and restored them in their land in unbelief. And I am under no illusions that they have been regathered in anything but unbelief. I've been there. I see the sin that takes place in Tel Aviv. It's tragic. But God in Ezekiel 36, he would bring them back into the land. I'm going to reach out. I'm going to bless you even when you don't deserve it. It's the same thing that he does in reaching out to us. His mercy endures forever. Thanks. Let's pray. Father, thanks so much for the fact that Jesus lives and your mercy endures forever. In Jesus' name, amen.